Now, if somebody brings forth a message and it's not interpreted, a second one can bring it forth. If it's not interpreted, a third one can. But after that, it needs to stop. Okay? God gives 3 opportunities. And if it should have been interpreted, but somebody was just reluctant and didn't do it, isn't it great that God is so merciful and kind and patient with us that He'll just go back and do it again at some point? I've seen that happen until He gets us acclimated to this. Let the prophets speak, 2 or 3, and let the other judge. In other words, we are all to weigh it in the balances of the Word of God. Everything that's spoken. If anything be revealed to another that sitteth by, let the first hold his peace. For ye may all prophesy one by one, that all may learn, and all may be comforted. Again, this has to be done in the framework of the Spirit. We're talking about when the wind of God comes in and begins to move upon people, and they stand up and cry out to God and exhort the church. The Spirit is surging through them, and they're bringing forth an exhortation or an edification or something comforting. He says you can all do that. Maybe you can't imagine yourself doing that, but it's a working of the Spirit. So we're taking this to a higher level, aren't we, than where most people operate. And just because you've never been there doesn't mean you shouldn't go there, because it's in the Word of God. This is how the church is supposed to be. This is normal as far as God is concerned. Okay? For you may all prophesy one by one, that all may learn, and all may be comforted. And the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. So don't worry about being forced into anything. God doesn't force us. You see what he's saying here? God will move upon you, but if you don't speak out, he's not going to force you. The spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. You can decline. I don't know why you would, but other than maybe if there's fear there, which means love hasn't been made perfect yet. But the fact is, God isn't going to come in and turn you into a robot. You yield yourself, you can stop. There's no force here whatsoever. None. No foaming at the mouth, no eyes rolling in the back of your head. You know, some of these groups, I'm telling you, you run into everything. God is gentle as he moves upon you and wants to speak through you. You see, it's not meant for any of us to be spectators, but to be participants in the working of the Spirit. Okay? So it says, the spirits of the prophets are subject to the prophets. For God is not the author of confusion, but of peace, as in all churches of the saints. You're going to be at peace with this. There's nothing to fear if you honor the Lord. Okay? You'll be at peace. Now, watch what happens here. So many people get confused on this. And I want to straighten this out because there are those who will not let women speak in the church. And the Corinthians didn't. The Corinthian church absolutely would not allow a woman to say one word in church. The Apostle Paul is dealing with it. Watch what he does. Because Paul's not saying this. In verse 34 and 35, he's quoting what they are saying. Everybody got that? Paul is quoting their doctrine, not God's doctrine. He's bringing it up to them. Watch how he does this. Let your women keep silence in the churches, for it is not permitted unto them to speak, but they are commanded to be under obedience, as also saith the law. And if they will learn anything, let them ask their husbands at home, for it is a shame for a woman to speak in the church. There are some people that make a doctrine out of that. But what did Paul do with it? He quoted their doctrine. And now he says in the next verse, what? You see how he's countering it? It's like, how dare you? Doesn't it tell us in Acts chapter 2, your sons and your daughters shall prophesy?
Amen.
Didn't he say prophesying was for the church? So he's showing the Corinthians that their doctrine as recorded in 34 and 35 is wrong. And there are churches that will use this as a doctrine. And Paul says, what? 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 I'm trying to emphasize that. Maybe you've done that as a reaction at times. What? And he goes on and says, came the word of God out from you, or came it unto you only? He's talking to the men. You're the only ones who got it, huh? You're the only ones that came to. When in reality, women carried the gospel first. They discovered the empty tomb first. By the agency of a woman, without the agency of a man, Jesus was born. Born of a woman, made under the law. No man involved. How can they put the women down like that? See, it isn't that goes back to the old Catholic system and some of these old Puritan ways. No. Where they stifle the women and put them all on one side of the church and don't let them talk or anything. And I'll tell you, if their education was limited to what they could ask their husbands at home, they would remain quite dense and uneducated. No, he says, he counters that doctrine. These women also have the Spirit. They can also speak. They can also prophesy. Because other verses tell us that.